Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast devoted to the classic and sometimes not-so-classic genre cinema of yesteryear. This is Monster Kid Radio, and I am your writer, host, and producer, Derek M. Cook. Happy to have you here this time around as we continue my journey to Whoville, because we've got some more Doctor Who content coming up on this week's episode of the podcast. We are continuing our look at classic Doctor Who. When I say our look, I mean my first time look. I have not watched any classic Doctor Who, very little Doctor Who at all, really, before deciding to finally get into it. I know Doctor Who is a thing. I know a lot of y'all love Doctor Who. I'm starting to get there. And this week, we are continuing to look at the original run, the first season or series of Doctor Who, when we take a look at the second story arc, the Daleks. That's going to be fun. Oh, by the way, I haven't mentioned it yet. You digging this music that I'm playing here? I dig it a lot. This is the song March of the Mouse. It is some easy listening guitar, surf, Western flavored. It's from the band The Most Western Wave. You can find it on their EP release, self-titled, The Most Western Wave, over at westernwave.bandcamp.com. They're based out of Germany. Go check them out. Let them know that you heard about them here on Monster Kid Radio. So we've got that coming up, some more Doctor Who discussion, so that'll be a good time. Also, of course, we've got Kenny's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland, knocking it out of the park with some more Doctor Who coverage. And, you know, we can't go a week without talking about Ultraman here. Mark MATZKE'S Beta Capsule review continues his look at the Return of Ultraman. Before we get into the bulk of the show, I just want to give a quick shout out to a lot of you, specifically Captain Billy, who called and left me a personal voicemail. I'm not going to play it here on the show. I just want you to know, Captain Billy, that I really appreciate the kind words of support that you gave me via voicemail regarding my job search and everything that I'm dealing with here at MKR Central. You know, Captain Billy, you had some really interesting suggestions regarding some things that I might look into, and I appreciate the compliments regarding the quality of the recording that we do here. You know, Captain Billy did ask, or seemed a little confused, that I'm not a quote-unquote professional voiceover person or broadcaster, that sort of thing. He asked about that in this voicemail. And, you know, I'm not. This is what I do. I am strictly a podcaster. I've never done radio. I've never done television professionally. I mean, I did a semester of TV production in community college back in 93. Was it 92? I don't remember. It was a long time ago. Many, many moons ago. Anyway, I just appreciate the kind words, man. And if it was easy for me to find a way to transition into doing something professional, you know I would. I'd jump all over it. And it's something that I've considered. So again, Captain Billy, thank you for calling with your kind words and your support. And everybody who's sent me messages either through Facebook Messenger or by email, I appreciate you having my back as I deal with trying to find work and figuring out what life is going to be like now that Beth and I are back from Kuwait and just kind of getting back into the groove of things. Speaking of the groove of things, I'm ready to get into the groove of this episode, so here we go.
Have something you'd like to share with Monster Kid Radio? You can email the podcast at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484.
You think young Frankenstein was insane? Ha! Have we got a mad movie for you? Crazy House. It starts on a wild and stormy night when some crazy characters invite a nice, sweet nut to join them at their musty, haunted old house. A crazy house. When heads start rolling, when snakes start snaking and killers killing, and a sweet old lady starts sharpening her axe. Then things begin to pop at Crazy House. Don't miss Crazy House. You'll meet your kind of people there. Crazy House, rated PG, parental guidance suggested, and strictly enforced. You'll go berserk at Crazy House, at Crazy House, at Crazy House, at Crazy House.
the two most terrific names in screen evil, together in one shock show. Horror of Frankenstein and Scars of Dracula. Your ticket entitles you to be frightened out of your wits at no extra charge. Horror of Frankenstein and Scars of Dracula. In color, rated R.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Return of Ultraman, Episode 48, Will Take Earth. Original air date March 10th, 1972. While on patrol, Go steps away from radio contact in order to talk to a school-age boy named Masaru, who is skipping school. The youngster is making a chalk sketch on the sidewalk of lazy monster Yamaterans in response to his mother's constant nagging regarding his education. Their interaction ends when Go is called on to investigate an unidentified falling object, a capsule containing a tiny Yamaterans, which just happens to fall in front of Masaru. Though he cannot understand the little monster's babble, Go has a translation device that indicates the creature wants to be sent back to where he came from, or else the Earth will be in danger. It's too late, however. Yamaterans is a disease super spreader sent by alien Sasahiller, and everywhere young Masaru goes, especially to school, he takes the alien virus with him. While black pockmarks and hiccups are the first symptoms, the ultimate result is that the afflicted person quits all their duties and becomes complacent. Not even Masaru's mother is immune. As all of Tokyo quits their responsibilities, Yamaterans absorbs the negative energy and grows to full kaiju size. All of Monster Attack Team succumbs to the disease, until only Go is left to deal with the reluctant monster. That is, until he becomes infected as well. Masaru, whose natural laziness was reversed into activity by the same virus, may be humanity's last hope. Will Take Earth is a finely tuned fable, light-hearted and truly whimsical, in a manner reminiscent of Ultra Q's 6th episode, Grow Up Little Turtle, or Ultraman Episode 34, A Gift from the Sky, in which Hayata attempts to transform using a spoon. One of the most endearing elements of Ultraman across the decades is its willingness to veer into comedy and self-parody, and to fully inhabit a child's perspective. Episode 48 of Return of Ultraman does all of that in a charming manner, yet makes the satisfying choice of leaving our little anti-hero Masaru the same lazy truant he was when we first met him. The implication that series protagonist Hideki Go is more than a little in common with Masaru only adds to the likability of a character to whom viewers will soon have to say farewell. For Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
This is Invasion Earth, 2150 AD. This is Invasion Earth, 2150 AD. Planet Earth has been bombarded by meteorites, subjected to cosmic rays, savagely invaded by men of steel who have no flesh to pierce, no blood to spill. This is 2150 AD, the year when human beings are turned into living dead men, robo-men, the underground slaves of the world's new dictators. 2150 AD, a year that will thrill you and terrify you. a year of rebellion as a brave handful hold out in a last-ditch battle for human survival.
Attention, resist, and you will be exterminated.
Leading the resistance fighters is Peter Cushing, his most thrill-making role.
Come along.
Aided by Bernard Cribbins, a reluctant traveller.
Have you seen the girl? Where's the girl?
Ray Brooks, the boy with the knack. Who doesn't find life so easy in the year 2150 AD? Andrew Keir, Jill Kazan, Roberta Toby, all of them fighting to the death a mobilized band of burnt-out human beings, Robomen. With their flying saucers and an army of bloodless, fleshless metal monsters. This is Invasion Earth, 2150 AD. A shattering look into the future.
They're no good! The bombs are no good!
Doctor Who skate this time? Buy Wool's new shape Skyray with double flavors of raspberry and orange. And you get a free color picture card, one of a series showing Doctor Who and the Space Raiders battling with Daleks. Free when you buy Wool's new shape Skyray. Only 6 months.
Hello there, Monster Kid Radio heads. This is Kenny with a look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. Today we are going to continue our look at the Doctor Who television series, and for that we will hear the second paragraph of FM's first of 2 articles published on Doctor Who. Last time we were bombarded with a series of Who questions and a brief statement on Doctor Who's popularity in England and newfound fame in the States. Let's hear what comes next. So far, we've seen Doctor Who versus the Silurians, intelligent reptiles who went into hibernation millions of years ago and surfaced to find the descendants of the despised mammals known as apes, now making monkey shines and calling themselves men and women. The Ambassadors of Death, wherein Doctor Who flew on a solo mission into space to locate some missing astronauts and stumbled on a plot to start an interplanetary war. The Inferno, Doctor Who was thrust into this strange parallel world where a project to create a new energy source by penetrating the Earth's crust destroys the planet. And the Terror of the Autons, Doctor Who's beautiful assistant, was attacked by a plastic daffodil. Then Doctor Who was attacked by his own telephone cord. The Autons, guided by the arch-villain, the Master, attempted to control the plastic all over the Earth to destroy humanity. That is all for this week's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. We will have more next time. For MKR, this is Kenny saying adios.
Doctor, the universe is about to end. What? We need the orbital coordinates of 900 planets of the constellation of Castorberus in 17 seconds.
17 seconds?
16.
Constellation of Castorberus in how many seconds?
11.
Good interaction so far. 900 planets.
10.
Excellent response.
Come on, Doctor.
900 planets in how many seconds?
3.
3 seconds?
1 second, Doctor.
1 second? Well done, Prime.
Prime computer.
Not so loud.
Prime computer.
That's better.
Nightmare terror from the tomb. An ancient curse comes to life to strangle the living and raise the dead. Here is the horror and the terror of a story that began in ancient Egypt.
Take Cato Bay! Take him!
When Ka-Tu-Bay, a son of Pharaoh, died in the desert and was covered in the shroud that bore the sacred power of life and death.
What was he saying?
He says that death awaits all who disturb the resting place of Kato Bay.
Warning to every creature of flesh and blood. Beware the beat of the cloth-wrapped feet. Beware the curse of the mummy's shroud. This is the leader of the British expedition who came in search of the tomb. The rich and ruthless financier who believes money can bribe even the devil himself. This is the son who knows there is no escape.
Someone or something is trying to destroy us. I believe it'll find us wherever we go.
The wife and mother trapped by the mummy's shroud.
I see death.
This is Haiti, the crystal gazer, who sees into the past and the terrifying future. This is the girl who's doomed, cursed by the mummy's shroud.
You mean I'm going to die?
In a few minutes from now.
Kill her! Kill her!
Dead 1,000 years, now he lives and breathes to avenge an ancient curse. To strangle the living, raise the dead, and prey upon human flesh.
I'm telling you, we're going to get copyright stricken. It's going to happen.
Luckily, I am off key, so I don't think we will.
The programs that I use to make sure the audio sounds really good really struggled with you doing that last week. I don't know what it's going to sound like this week until we get to editing, but we'll find out.
Well, we are back with week 2 of Derek's journey to Whoville.
Going on down to Whoville, going to have us a good old time. I don't know.
I would say Cardiff is definitely the South Park of Southern England. So yes, Doctor Who original series, and for the very first time, we meet one of the quintessential Doctor Who monsters, the Daleks.
The Daleks, which is the name of the story arc that we watched. So 7 episodes, I believe, is what it ended up being.
Yeah, a long one this time.
A long stint, and I knew what the Daleks were. As I said last week, I have a little bit of experience or exposure to Doctor Who through things like the Lego Dimensions video game and just pop culture in general.
But I mean, when you see British stuff, anything to do with sci-fi and British, they're going to put a Dalek on it, yeah.
I've even seen the Daleks referenced in an episode of the Great Baking British Bake-Off Baking Show British with Paul Hollywood.
The Great British...
Well, you're doing it.
You transferred the
flubs.
The flubs to me. Okay, sorry.
The Great
British Bake-Off. Yes, they have even referenced Daleks there.
Somebody built a cake shaped like a Dalek, I think.
You know, I've even heard that certain members of the royal family particularly enjoyed the Daleks.
And there was that movie about Stephen Hawking, and there's a scene where he's in the wheelchair chasing somebody going, exterminate, exterminate. So I know the Daleks are a thing, especially in the UK. And I guess here now, too, because everybody loves Who here as well. You know, an observation I'd like to make about Doctor Who. I feel like Doctor Who is the UK's Ultraman. That Ultraman is huge in Japan, right? And it's been going for so long.
Okay.
And Doctor Who, and then we have our Star Trek. So I feel like Doctor Who is their homegrown sci-fi serial show. And I don't know. I think the observation kind of falls apart outside of that. Anyway.
I'll give you that. I mean, I don't know much about the production teams of the original Ultraman, and so I don't know if it lines up nicely the way that Star Trek does with Who over here. But yeah, it's that sci-fi that's really like hope-based and positive in a way that there's someone who's going to save us and someone always looking out for us. And so the Doctor really has been that for British pop culture for the last 60 years.
Yeah, that's true. I can see that. This story picks up immediately after On an Earthly Child. This dives right into it.
Which is how, I know this is your first transition from arc to arc, but that's how older Who tends to be. It just picks up right where the last one left off. They tended to film them, boom, 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 all in a row, and so they're just going right from filming the Unearthly Child series right into filming this one. No reason to stop. So
right.
Yeah, you do get that feel of it just picked up seconds after the last one left off.
Right. In fact, we even had a little bit of a cliffhanger in the last one where we see the radiation gauge going kind of berserk, and then we bleed right into that. And this whole arc ended the same way. They're all in the TARDIS trying to get away, and there's a problem, and shaky cam, and everybody falls to the floor. What's going to happen next? Tune in next time, which they didn't really know if there's going to be too many more next times because it hadn't been renewed yet, from what I understand. So they had some filler episodes ready to go in case, that sort of thing. Anyway, the Daleks, this is the first time I've encountered them, and I kept asking you, is this the first time the Doctor's encountered them? And he acts like it is.
He does. It's just the thing with Doctor Who is because you can bounce around in time, asking if it's the first time he's done something is always a problematic question because this Doctor, yeah, I think this Doctor, it's the first time he's seen them, but another Doctor may have seen them at an earlier time chronologically, even though it's later in his timeline.
Right, okay.
Does that make sense? So it's, have we done this before is an interesting and difficult question in Doctor Who.
I can see that, but in terms of the production and what they were intending at the time, I'm sure nobody thought Time Lords, regeneration, timeline.
I don't know that the Daleks were originally intended to be anything more than a one-off. I don't know what you would call. I mean, yes, enemy, but at the same time, it's like in Star Trek, when you go down to a planet, you don't just assume that whoever you find there is an enemy. There's a decent chance they could be friendly or whatever. So I don't want to call all of the antagonists, I guess, in Doctor Who enemies, because they're not all enemies.
Mm-hmm.
There's always some issue, and maybe, we have either a communication issue or a cultural divide issue, but they're not necessarily all enemies. And so the Doctor's not necessarily going down with the idea that there's something that could kill you down there.
Right. The Doctor also is more of a jerk this time around, I feel like. He was already a little gruff, but he's kind of a flat-out jerk. Yeah. He's lying to everybody to get them to go explore the city.
I told you, number one rule, the Doctor lies.
Which isn't cool, man. Dude, what are you doing?
It is, well, it's his character. It's a character flaw for him, and everybody's got him, and this is his, and yeah.
Well, he lies about them having to go to the city. He's kind of a jerk. He's actually shown to be kind of, I won't say physically weak, but there are a few scenes, if not full-on episodes, where he is not the driving force here, that he is captured. He is locked up. He's not able to really propel anything forward. That's left to Ian.
To his companions.
Yeah, specifically Ian. I feel like, what was the woman's name?
Barbara.
Barbara gets relegated sometimes to the background to making the soup or the food or being maybe a love interest, but and maybe that'll change. I mean, it's the era.
It is that era, and I think we see Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter, do a little more action-wise than Barbara. Barbara does kind of get relegated into girlfriend status, even though she's not,
Right, and I was going to ask you about that, if we're going to see some sparks fly between the two older companions, because at one point you even made a joke when one of the blonde falls was kind of cast and looks at her. Hands off my woman, I wonder if we're going to see some romance develop between the two of them.
That's okay. That's an interesting prediction. I like that. So the Daleks themselves, let's get into that.
Okay.
They land on this planet. There is a city far away. They got these cool binocular glasses that they're using that are literally just binoculars, but with arms like glasses.
Right,
so,
right.
They spy this city. Yeah, the doctor pulls his nonsense with, oh, this spare part needs refilling with mercury. Yeah, mercury, sure. And this is assuming that this planet would even have the same elements that we have in it.
Yeah, it's very but we're just going to go get mercury from the city. That's what you do, right?
No problem. So they head on into the city, and while they're in the forest, one of them gets touched on the shoulder by a hand.
Right, and we saw that.
A very human hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we get to see. They didn't actually see the hand. We saw the hand. So there are some sort of human creatures in this forest, at least.
There's something in the forest.
Yeah.
And when they get to the city, well, that's when they meet the Daleks. Mm-hmm. And I was a little shocked that
who do not have human hands.
No, they do not, but they've got something. Mm-hmm. I was a little shocked. I remember when we talked about the Daleks on the show in the past, and I think I mentioned this last week, that a listener called in and said, well, they're not robots. There's actually something inside them. And I knew that was a modern Who thing. I knew that had been done in a modern Who. I didn't realize, though, going all the way back, we saw it there. There's something in that casing. It's not a robot. It's a casing. It's a shell. It's a machine.
So, indeed, and if you haven't watched it, this would be a great place to stop, because there's going to be a lot of spoilers. There's just no way to talk about the episode without doing that, so this is your spoiler warning.
Spoilers.
Now that you've been warned, they are captured by the Daleks, but in true Who style, they managed to incapacitate their guard. That's something that tends to happen. I think that's a real trope from sci-fi shows and movies. Oh, we got captured, but they only left one person to guard us, and we tricked them, you know?
Yeah.
Basically tricked the Dalek, open its case with the intent of hiding inside, one of them hiding inside, which I was kind of like, you just opened this case? You have no idea what's going on here. That could kill whatever it is. You don't know if that's its like spacesuit or whatever. Like, it's kind of bloodthirsty in a way that you just pop it open.
Well, my impression wasn't that they thought there was some, like, I thought they were robots too, and they were trying to figure out how they work. That's all I thought. I didn't think they were like, let's kill what's inside. I thought more of they thought it was a robot.
Yeah,
let's take it apart.
I'm not saying that they thought they were going to kill what's inside, but like, once they open it, and it's the guys that open it, Ian opens it, I believe, originally, calls the doctor over to look, cleverly tells the ladies to stand guard in the hallway, which is like the most obvious, you little women can't handle what we got going on here, so go stand outside there and don't look. You know, and so the women are in the hallway, really looking down the hall, really like trying to spot anything they can. So not looking inside the Dalek. And all we really see is they use, what was it, the cape? They use a blanket or cape or whatever that they'd gotten earlier to scoop up whatever's inside and basically toss it over in the corner, if you will. We get a little bit of a tentacle, sort of.
We see something kind of wiggle out a little bit, and then there's no payoff to that.
No payoff to that. But it's clear that the guys are horrified. The doctor and Ian are pretty horrified by what they found inside. My issue with it is you opened it up at the point where you realize there's a being inside. They're not at all worried that that keeping it out of the case could kill it or whatever. They just kind of nonchalantly tossed the carcass to the side. I think they think it's dead, maybe.
Yeah. That's true,
we see it twitch and move from under the blanket, so we know it's not dead. But, like, That's kind of callous and just murdery at that point.
At that point, though, they've been captured. They've kind of gone back and forth a little bit, and they're just trying to figure out how to get home or get to the TARDIS so they can get home.
I get it. I'm just saying it's a little more murdery behavior than I typically see from the Doctor. Even in the future, where he very much knows where the Daleks are, and they are, one of his sworn enemies, if you will. He's not so casual or unfeeling about their deaths.
Okay.
So I found that the callousness there a little unusual.
I think, and again, at this point, they had no idea that they had a juggernaut on their hands, right? They had no idea. So they're still kind of figuring out what they're doing and how they're doing it. And, even to some of the characterizations being a little bit different than what we saw in the last arc, with Susan being a lot more of a giggly schoolgirl type, to the point to where I just wanted to shut her up and sit her in the corner somewhere, where she wasn't that bad in the first arc.
Yeah.
She was very giggly and, oh, no.
Much more childish.
Very childish. And whatever. They're still trying to figure out the characterizations. And it's, early run of the show,
Absolutely.
too. So I could see where you're coming from, though, too, especially now having experiences with other doctors, knowing.
It's interesting that you comment that they didn't know they had a juggernaut on their hands. I think the argument could be made that they didn't have a juggernaut on their hands until they got involved with the Daleks.
Yeah.
The Daleks didn't, it was pretty clear they hadn't been to space.
Yeah, true.
They didn't have off-world ships. They didn't have ambitions. They just wanted to rule Skaro, their planet.
Yeah.
And get rid of the Falls. And you could make an argument pretty easily that the Doctor actually created his own problem in the Daleks. And
I asked you about that when we were watching it, because they're starting to talk to the Doctor a little bit, and he's trying to explain, just let us get back to our ship. What's a ship? What ship? Where are you from?
Yeah.
Dude, you are now telling the enemy, and again, I think...
This is why we have the Prime Directive in Star Trek,
You're telling the people that have proven that they're willing to use a neutron bomb on the planet to wipe out all life except their own.
And willing to do it a second time.
Yeah, to not just do it once.
Keep the radiation going.
We didn't do it good enough last time. Bomb it again. Exterminate on a grand scale. The Doctor's telling them everything they need to know, basically, about how to find more worlds to conquer. If somebody came here in a ship, well, we just need a ship of our own then. We need to get off planet because the Doctor came from somewhere. This is your fault.
Yeah.
You did this, Doc. And kind of picking up on some things that you've said, and very brief reading that I've done, not looking for spoilers, just for production information.
Mm-hmm.
He goes on trial? He's the last of his kind?
He goes on trial.
Isn't there a trial of the Doctor? At some point, I could be wrong. But my understanding is that the Doctor's held responsible for a lot of things that happened regarding the Daleks. I could be wrong. Again, consider this a prediction. We'll revisit this when it comes up.
Okay.
But we saw a Dalek wiggling around from underneath the cape thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the very last shot we see of the Daleks as they're fleeing, one is still moving around, even though they've tried to shut everything down.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that's still spinning. Now, was that on purpose to tell us the Daleks are coming back? Or was this a flub? Was this somebody moving something they shouldn't have been moving? Who knows? But in retrospect, it's easy to say, that guy was moving. Look, they're not all dead.
And that usually, I would say, I think maybe it was on purpose, because that has been a continuous line with the Daleks throughout their existences. If there's even one left, then they're going to come back. If you don't get every single one, they will definitely come back. So I know it's early days, but I think that may have been on purpose.
Well, it's Terry Nation as the writer, and I trust him as a writer. Terry Nation, this is his first involvement with Doctor Who,
mm-hmm.
And I know he does a little bit more as well. I'm a fan of what the man does, at least what the limit of it that I've seen. So I'm excited to see more Terry Nation, Doctor Who, and just going to see what happens next. This 7-episode arc, I feel like, did kind of spin its wheels a little bit. There are a few bits here and there that I would have tightened up to the point to where you probably even have eliminated an episode if you wanted to.
I think so. Yeah.
There were a few points when you and I were watching it, and one of us went to the kitchen to do some things while we're watching because it's just kind of spinning its wheels. And, there's a subplot that lasts an episode where a guy doesn't want to really be involved in the fighting anymore, and he wants to go home, but he can't go home because a cave caved in. And is he going to make it across the chasm or not? Who knows? I feel like some of that could have been trimmed. But
I think but you do have to remember where we are in time in terms of television creation too.
Mm-hmm.
That this wasn't created with the idea that someone was going to sit down and watch all 7 episodes, boom, 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 in a row like that. They were having to go from week to week to week, stretching them out, And so I think sometimes some of the things that take up time in the episodes, like recaps and stuff, we don't need them because we're watching it all. We're binging it, watching it all in a row. But if you were watching it a week apart every single time, I can see where some of that becomes more necessary. And something I've noticed is a lot of the British shows, they kind of organize themselves more in these short arcs, but then they have a lot of short arcs in what we would call a season. They would call a series.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think maybe they were just stretching them out to meet that number of episodes.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And you're right. They weren't intended to be watched back to back to back. These were one and dones. Mm-hmm. They would rebroadcast very rarely, and to the point to where the next big arc, they didn't even save.
Yeah, it's lost.
It's gone. And this is something that you see with a lot of early television, even in entire networks. The DuPont network here in the States, very little of what they created is still around. Mm-hmm. The BBC had a junking policy. If you could reuse videotape, if you could reuse this stuff, or if you can break it down to its parts and repurpose it for something else, do it. It's the same issue we have with all the silent films being gone. It's the same issue we have with so many talking films from the early days being gone, or early television. We're lucky we've got all of Dark Shadows,
Do you think that culture of reusing, recycling, do you think a lot of that may have come out of the fact that the early days, at least in like television and film for the BBC, were during and directly after World War II, when everything was rationed and it had to be reused, reduce, reuse, recycle, type thing. And even into the 50s and 60s, there was still rationing. People still were using ration books in the UK when that stuff had long ended here in the US. And so maybe that idea of reusing things was just so ingrained in them that that's partially what happened.
Maybe, especially in the UK, especially in Europe, and places affected more directly by the war than we were here in the States. And I know we had some efforts as well, but, in the UK, where they're directly across the street from the enemy, mm-hmm. perhaps. And TV was not thought to be the media giant that it is today.
Sure. All right, so moving away from that kind of stuff and into the story of
what we saw here.
Of the arc itself. We see the Daleks for the first time. We get to know them a little bit. We realize that they are very hate motivated. Mm-hmm. That's their whole thing, is hate, and they hate the Thals, who they share the planet with, to the point where, really, yeah, you said they're willing to set off another neutron bomb. They've already done it once.
Yeah.
And we've had enough time to adapt and stuff. They think the Thals are dead. The Thals think they're dead.
Yeah.
Am I accurate here? And it's a very interesting cultural setup where the minute that the Daleks know that the Thals are alive, they have to start planning how to kill them all. Whereas the Thals don't even want to lift a hand. They're such pacifists that they don't want to do anything against the Daleks or to stop them, that they've kind of grown beyond that, if you will, as a society. But they kind of come to realize that at some point you have to stop certain aggressors and, you can't just let them run over you and kill you.
Yeah, and I thought it was a little silly the way they did that, to be completely honest, with Ian flirting with one of the Thal women that he knew one of the guys had the hots for, to kind of stir up those emotions. That felt a little too on the nose. Something else that I thought was a little on the nose. What did the Thals look like? They were perfect, statuesque, blonde, Aryan-looking dudes.
They were, yeah.
And they were the pacifists.
Yeah.
Whereas 20 years prior, the Aryans were the ones, the Nazi master race thing. Yeah. So to have that swap was interesting, I thought.
I see you put them as Aryans. They didn't all actually have blonde hair. So a number of the women had a little bit darker hair and stuff. And I actually thought if you looked at, especially the guy who didn't want Ian going after his girl, I thought that they kind of looked at like an idealized version of the British, if you will.
Okay.
And so it felt kind of like they were supposed to be the British, and then you had these aggressors that were just filled with hate. And so it was the idea we can't just stand back and let hate overrun everything, storybook lesson of all of that. So I kind of got that and everything. The Thals had been great warriors who had become farmers. Is that not kind of the British track? They'd been these great warriors, but now they were feeding Europe, breadbasket of Europe and all that. It felt a little on the nose there in those terms. But I can see for the time period them wanting to tell those stories. It kind of makes sense,
Yeah.
And as I told you, we're going to meet more enemies or antagonists as we go along through Who, and you will see that some of them are kind of boiled down to their simplest part. And like I said, the Daleks are all about hate. Hate is their driving force for everything that they do, whereas there are other species that have gotten rid of their emotions. They don't want emotion. Emotion is too painful, and so they've gotten rid of them so they don't have to feel that pain. Kind of an interesting dichotomy there. And so a lot of these different races have been boiled down to, or species have been boiled down to a single characteristic that they really focus on in order to tell some of these morality tales and other stories.
Well, and I'm looking forward to running into that. I know that I said that maybe an episode's worth of material could have been pared off or shaved off the top here, but I was never bored, and I'm excited to watch more of it. Now, the Marco Polo storyline is the one that's lost.
There is too bad.
There's a reconstruction of it, and I'm disappointed too, because my very brief reading again tells me that they originally were going to be doing a lot of going back in time as well as into the future and all that. But as they progressed, they learned that people responded better to the flashy whiz-bang sci-fi of going to the future and other planets and stuff. So going back in time kind of did not become the main thing. And Marco Polo, that would have been a cool thing to see how they handled that at that point in the Doctor Who production timeline. Now, that is not the next story, though. There's a 2-episode run that happens before Marco Polo. I don't know if that's a lost arc or not. I would like to watch it. I just don't want this to become just the Doctor Who podcast, so we're going to pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do more Doctor Who, and we will come back to Doctor Who. But I think to do these 2 arcs back to back, I've properly...
We've filled your Who hole now?
I wasn't going to go there. We've temporarily
filled your Who hole.
Oh, boy.
Maybe once a month we do a little digest or something.
We're just
a bit.
We're done. I'm not going to say.
All right. Well, with that, we will release you back to your regularly scheduled monster content. But thank you for coming down this journey with me, especially the second arc, which has more of a monster in it, and for meeting the monsters that are the Dalek. And
yeah, we didn't even talk about the illusions of the time machine and the Eloi versus Morlock thing, and and all of that. So there's definitely a lot of Monster Kid
Don't
credit.
worry, because we have more Daleks coming up in the future. So
yeah, and I'm excited to do more Who. Listeners, again, I know that last week Beth told you that Vincent was her favorite story. I want to know what your favorite story of Doctor Who is. It doesn't have to be from the classic run. It can be modern Who, whatever. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on Doctor Who. So call in or email us and let us know, and we'll bank those until the next time we hop into that TARDIS and venture into Whoville.
Just don't leave the parking brake on.
I'm going to end on that. I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to end on that. As always, thank you for being here. Huge thanks to Mark and Kenny for their segments. The segments that are sent in by Mark and Kenny make this show so much better. And if you are interested in becoming a segment producer and contributing something to the show, drop me a line, email me, let me know what you've got in mind, and we'll talk about how we can make it happen. Because, the more, the merrier. And that's why I really love having Beth being part of the show as well, because, well, she makes me merry, and I hope you've enjoyed her contributions as well. So huge thanks to Beth for being part of the show this week. Head over to monsterkidradio.net where you're going to find all of our contact information, which Beth mentioned earlier. I'll have her mention it again here. Well, how about now?
Have something you'd like to share with Monster Kid Radio? You can email the podcast at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484.
You can also find links to our Facebook page, our Facebook group, our Twitter, our Reddit, our Patreon, our Discord. Everything that we do online you can find right there, plus our Amazon affiliate link. If you're going to buy anything through Amazon, please consider using the Amazon affiliate link, because when you do that, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but it does take a penny or two out of the Bezos paycheck and puts them into the Monster Kid Radio coffer, and it really helps us out. I mentioned Patreon. Speaking of helping us out, if you become a patron of Monster Kid Radio, you're going to get some exclusive content, because later this month, Beth and I are going to be doing a video review of the new movie from the Asylum, Monster Mash, starring Michael Madsen as Dr. Frankenstein. It looks crazy, and I'm eager to watch it, and I'm eager to share that with anybody who is a patron of Monster Kid Radio. Any patronage level will get you access to the exclusive video review of Monster Mash. That's coming up. I think that's something worth signing up for. I hope so. We'll find out when we watch the movie. So that's coming up as well. Also, we're going to be ramping up our YouTube stuff again here soon. So if you haven't subscribed to the Team Death YouTube channel, please consider doing so. Look up Team Death. It's DETH. And subscribe to the YouTube channel there, and you'll start seeing some content floating your way here in the very near future, I'm hoping. Let's talk about the future, though. Let's talk about the next few episodes of Monster Kid Radio. I mentioned this on Facebook. I'm going to mention it here as well. This Sunday is the Monster Kid Radio Crash event, where we're going to go crash the Hollywood Theater and watch the original Dawn of the Dead. This is a very special monster movie for me, zombie movie for me, just movie period for me. And I'm excited to watch it. And I'm going to cover the experience of going to see it on the big screen, 45th anniversary restored edition, on an upcoming episode of Monster Kid Radio. Plus, we've got a new vampire movie coming out here soon called Abigail. And for whatever reason, some press material has likened Abigail to the original Dracula's daughter. Not sure why, not sure how. The trailer doesn't make me think of Dracula's daughter, but we latched onto that here at MKR Central. Beth and I are going to be watching Dracula's daughter and Abigail and talking about that in an upcoming episode of Monster Kid Radio. Yes, I know we have talked about Dracula's daughter in the past. We're going to do it again because it's a good movie. Also, I've got a Jack Arnold episode planned where we're going to take a look at my favorite top 3 Jack Arnold movies that don't have the Gilmad in them. And I'm going to have a special guest. Who is that special guest? Stay tuned to find out. But he's a fellow podcaster, and he's never been on Monster Kid Radio before. So that should be fun as well. And it's May coming up here soon, and we can't have May without Lucha de Mayo. I did it again, and I don't mean to. Lucha de Mayo, where we're going to take a look at some luchador movies. We're not going to do luchador movies all month long, but we're going to do maybe 1 or 2. And if you've been listening to the show and you heard Matt on the show not too long ago, I threatened to show him Champions of Justice. Again, I know I've talked about it here on the show in the past, but he's never seen it. And I cannot wait to get his take on basically the Avengers of luchador movies. And I'll do another Luchador movie too at some point. In May. I'm excited about what the future of MKR brings, and I'm excited to have you along, so stay tuned, everybody.
Monster Kid Radio is a Team Death production. All original content of Monster Kid Radio is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 Unported license. You can learn more about Team Death or other projects like Death Designs, Mail Order Zombie, Monster Kid Writer, and more at www.teamdeath.com. Remember, death is spelled D-E-T-H. That's teamdeath.com. Please rate and review Monster Kid Radio wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
March of the Mouse is copyright 2024, The Most Western Wave. You can find them at westernwave.bandcamp.com, where you can pick up their self-titled release, The Most Western Wave. Check out all 5 tracks. Let them know that Monster Kid Radio sent you. It's awesome stuff, man. I'm digging this a lot. My name is Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. Ciao.